So picture this. You're standing at the counter, right? You are staring directly at the barista, and you know the exact word you want to say. Like, you want oat milk. It's right there in your
Oh,
brain.
you've literally rehearsed it while standing in line.
Exactly. You've practiced it. But suddenly, it's your turn to order, and your heart rate just spikes. Your throat physically locks up, and you just sort of, I don't know, you just point at the menu and grunt.
It is honestly agonizing. It's the worst feeling.
Why does our brain betray us like that? I mean, when you need it the most, you have the knowledge in your head, you have the vocabulary, but you completely freeze. Your mind just goes entirely blank, and you want the floor to just open up and swallow you whole.
Yeah, it's a very specific kind of betrayal, isn't it? Knowing you have the intellectual capacity to say the thing, but the physical delivery mechanism just completely shuts down on you.
Totally. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. So our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the ultimate actionable toolkit for confident communication. We want to figure out how to break you out of that paralysis.
Right, because everyone experiences it.
Everyone. And the materials we're using to figure this out are actually incredibly revealing. We've been going through this huge stack of transcripts from a 30-day language fluency challenge. Specifically, we're looking at the first 10 days of a program called the Speak Up Sessions.
Now, I do want to clarify something right out of the gate here, because the context is super crucial. On the surface, the Speak Up sessions are designed for learners who are trying to speak English fluently.
Right.
So the transcripts are full of non-native speakers practicing vocabulary and like past tense verbs and stuff. But if you look at the mechanics of what the instructor is actually teaching, the underlying psychological hurdles, it's wild. The fear of judgment, the overthinking, that crippling perfectionism, and that visceral freeze response you mentioned, those are entirely universal.
They really are. That is the whole reason we chose this material. The lessons in these transcripts are secretly this incredible masterclass in how human beings talk to one another under pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, whether you are learning a second language, or maybe you're prepping for a massive boardroom presentation, or honestly just trying not to be super awkward at a neighborhood barbecue, the mechanics of confidence are exactly the same.
They really are identical. And today we are going to explore exactly how those mechanics work. Like, we'll look at the psychology behind making mistakes and why our brains literally perceive a grammar error as a threat to our actual survival.
Which is so crazy to think about.
It is. And we'll also examine the physical muscle memory of talking, which most people just completely ignore. We'll figure out how to stop that lag time where you're over-translating your thoughts. And finally, we'll look at the daily habits that build bulletproof confidence.
Okay, let's get right into the material then. I really want to look closely at day one of these transcripts, because this is where the psychological barrier is at its absolute highest. We are introduced to this student named Fizu.
Right. Fizu, he is essentially going to be our proxy for this entire deep dive. I mean, he represents the ultimate case study in communication anxiety.
I really felt for Fizu immediately. Like, in the very first session, the instructor, this guy named Masu, welcomes him to the challenge. And Fizu just lays it all out there. He says, sometimes I feel shy, sometimes I forget words, sometimes I think too much about grammar, and I just stop talking.
Yeah, it's a profound admission. And it's so raw. What Fizu is describing isn't just some quirky personality trait, It is a well-documented psychological phenomenon, and it's all centered around cognitive load.
Okay, let's pause right there. Cognitive load. Break that down for me, because it sounds like we're talking about like a computer server, not a human brain.
Well, the comparison is actually incredibly accurate. Your brain has a finite amount of working memory available at any given millisecond. So think of it like the RAM in a computer.
Okay, yeah.
If you have, say, 50 heavy browser tabs open all at once, the computer slows to a crawl, right? And eventually the whole screen just freezes.
The dreaded spinning wheel of death?
Precisely. That is exactly what happens in your head. In a conversation, just forming a basic sentence takes a certain amount of RAM. But if you are hyper-focused on this concept of perfection...
Like getting the grammar exactly right.
Right. If you are simultaneously running background programs where you are checking your own grammar and you're analyzing the other person's micro-expressions to see if they look bored, and you're worrying about your accent and trying to sound exceptionally smart, your cognitive load just maxes out.
You literally run out of memory.
Exactly. You don't have enough RAM left to actually retrieve the word for oat milk. The system crashes.
Okay, I totally get the RAM analogy, but I mean, it feels way worse than just a computer crashing. A computer crashing doesn't make my palms sweat and my heart race like I'm running a marathon. Why does the actual physical panic set in?
Ah, okay. So that is because that intense focus on perfection puts the brain into a state of acute social threat. And this goes all the way back to our evolutionary wiring.
Wait, really? So my brain thinks I am in actual physical danger just because I might, like, use the wrong verb tense in a marketing meeting? That seems like a massive design flaw.
I mean, it is a massive design flaw for the modern world, but you have to remember how we evolved as a species. For early humans, social rejection was quite literally a death
Because
sentence.
you needed the tribe.
Exactly. If you looked foolish or you violated the norms of the group and you were cast out of the tribe, you would starve or you'd be eaten by something. You couldn't survive alone out on the savannah.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense.
So today, thousands of years later, when you are standing in front of your colleagues and you worry about looking incompetent, your nervous system doesn't differentiate that from a physical threat like a predator. It triggers the exact same fight, flight, or freeze response.
That is wild.
And think about the context of a conversation. You can't exactly fight the person you were talking to.
Probably not advised in a staff meeting, no.
Right, HR might have a problem with that. And you can't just sprint out of the conference room either. So if you can't fight and you can't flee, what does the nervous system do? It defaults to the third option. You freeze.
That is just, it's mind-blowing. So that blank mind, that terrifying silence where you're just staring at someone with your mouth open.
Yeah.
You aren't just being forgetful or stupid. You are experiencing an ancient survival mechanism kicking in at the absolute worst possible time.
Yes. And Masu, the instructor in the transcripts, he tackles this head on. He realizes he can't just teach Fizu more vocabulary words to fix the freeze. That won't work. He has to lower the stakes. He constantly insists throughout the whole first week that fluency is not about perfection. It's about comfortable, natural communication. The goal is connection, not a flawless performance.
You know, this makes me think of a bicycle analogy. Like, imagine you're getting on a bike for the very first time. If you sit on the seat and try to actively, consciously calculate the physics of gravity and your exact center of balance and the centrifugal force of the wheels.
Oh, and the precise mathematical angle of your pedals all at the exact same time?
Yes. If you try to calculate all of that, you are going to fall over instantly.
Right. You cannot intellectualize the act of riding a bike while you are actively doing it.
You just have to pedal and basically trust your body to figure it out in motion.
And it's the same with speaking. You cannot hyper-analyze a conversation while having one. The analysis literally paralyzes the action.
Okay, I love that, but I feel like I have to push back here. Just on behalf of anyone listening who has real, genuine anxiety about speaking, and on behalf of Fizu.
Go for it.
Because it's very easy for a teacher to sit there in a safe classroom and say, hey, don't worry about perfection, lower the stakes, it's fine. But what if people do judge you?
Yeah.
Like, what if you give a presentation, you stumble, and your boss actually thinks less of you, or you try to speak Spanish on vacation in Mexico and people laugh at you? The social threat feels real because sometimes people are actually judgmental jerks.
It's a completely valid fear. It really is. And Masu's response to Fizu in the transcript when this exact fear comes up is surprisingly grounded. He doesn't give him toxic positivity. He doesn't say, oh, Fizu, no one will ever laugh at you.
Right, because they might.
Exactly. Instead, he says something really powerful. He says, real people respect learners.
Oh, real people respect learners.
He draws a hard line there. He tells Fizu that if someone genuinely mocks you for making a mistake while you are clearly out there trying to communicate, their opinion is irrelevant. It reflects a major flaw in their character, not a flaw in your competence.
That's a great way to frame it.
You have to actively choose to only value the judgment of people who understand the vulnerability of learning.
I mean, that takes a lot of mental discipline, though, to just decide that the smirking guy in the third row of your presentation doesn't matter.
It does take discipline. But Masu also goes out of his way to humanize the process. He shows Fizu that the goal isn't to reach some magical, mythical state where mistakes never happen, because even native speakers mess up constantly.
Oh, the story he tells.
Yes, he tells this fantastic self-deprecating story about a time he confused the phrases, I'm boring and I'm bored.
I read that part. It was hilarious. He was at a party trying to tell people he had nothing to do, and he kept walking around announcing to everyone, I am boring. Meaning, like, I'm an uninteresting person with absolutely no personality.
Exactly, and people were giving him very strange, polite looks, as you would. But the crucial takeaway is how Masu handled it when he finally realized the mistake. He didn't flee the party in shame. He didn't freeze.
He just laughed.
He laughed, he corrected himself to the group, and he just kept talking. The Speak Up curriculum explicitly treats mistakes as necessary data points.
Data points. I really like that phrasing. It takes the emotion out of it.
Exactly. Because without mistakes, you have no data on where your boundaries are. Without data, there is no improvement. If you never, ever push yourself to the point of saying the wrong word, you are staying inside a very small, very safe box.
So for you listening right now, just think about a recent time when you stayed completely silent in a room just to avoid looking foolish. Maybe you had a genuinely good idea in a brainstorming session, but you weren't 100% sure you could articulate it perfectly.
So you just swallowed the idea.
Right, you stayed quiet.
Hmm.
The profound lesson from this first week of transcripts is that staying silent is the only true failure. The mistake isn't data. The silence is a void. You get nothing from it.
Rebranding your mistakes as necessary data is the absolute required psychological foundation. You have to start there. But as we see moving into day 4 and 5 of Fizu's journey, psychology alone isn't enough.
Right, because I can sit here and intellectually accept that mistakes are good data points all day long. I can put it on a bumper sticker. But that doesn't magically make my vocal cords vibrate when the panic sets in at the front of a room.
Exactly. Understanding the fear doesn't automatically grant you the physical ability to speak fluently under pressure. And this is a massive, massive blind spot for most people. We tend to treat communication as a purely mental exercise. But speaking is highly physical.
See, this was the most surprising part of the transcripts for me. Masu introduces this concept of shadowing, and it's entirely focused on the physical mechanics of the mouth.
Yeah, let's really break down why shadowing matters. Because most people, when they prepare for a communication challenge, whether it's learning French or prepping for a brutal quarterly review at work, they read, they listen to podcasts, they look at their notes silently.
Right, you just stare at your laptop screen.
But those are receptive skills. Your brain is absorbing information, but speaking requires the complex, instantaneous coordination of your lungs, your vocal cords, your tongue, your lips, and your jaw. It is a productive skill. It's athletic.
So just because I can read a brilliant sentence on my laptop screen, it doesn't mean my mouth knows how to physically form those shapes in real time?
Precisely. And shadowing bridges that gap. In the transcripts, Masu plays an audio phrase like, "I am not afraid of mistakes." And Fizu has to immediately repeat it out loud, over and over. He has to physically match the rhythm, the intonation, the speed.
It's literally a gym for your mouth.
That is the perfect way to look at it. You are building actual muscle memory. Think of an athlete. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon just by reading a really good book about the biomechanics of running, would you?
I mean, I'd like to, but no.
Right. You can't just study the theory of a marathon. You have to physically go out and condition the muscles in your legs. So why do we expect to communicate confidently in a high-pressure situation if we haven't physically conditioned our mouth to speak those specific words?
Okay, I love the gym analogy, but let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Because in the transcripts, Masu pushes this even further. It gets a little weird.
Yeah.
He tells Fizu to talk out loud to himself when he's completely alone in his apartment. He says, narrate your chores.
Yeah. The narrating life exercise.
A classic.
Fizu is literally instructed to stand in his kitchen and announce to an empty room, "I am making coffee, I am cutting the vegetables, the water is boiling." And Fizu pushes back. He gets frustrated. He says, "Masu, this feels ridiculous. I feel crazy talking to the wall."
Which is a very normal reaction.
Right, and I have to agree with Fizu here. Isn't this just practicing in a vacuum? Like, the freeze response happens because another human being is looking at me, judging me. It doesn't happen because I somehow forgot how to physically move my jaw. It's a great pushback and a really common one. But you're separating the physical from the psychological when they're actually deeply intertwined. Yes, the trigger for the freeze is the social pressure. But when that pressure hits, if the physical act of speaking those specific words feels new or clunky to your mouth, the cognitive load spikes again.
Ah, I see. It's compounding the issue.
Exactly. By walking around your kitchen saying, "I am cutting vegetables" out loud, you are doing two things. First, you are smoothing out the phonetic pathways. You are training the muscles so that forming the words requires basically zero RAM.
It becomes automatic.
And second, and honestly more importantly, you are training your nervous system that the act of speaking out loud is a safe, baseline, normal activity.
You're lowering the barrier to entry for speech.
Exactly. If you only ever speak out loud when you are in a high-stakes conversation, your brain associates the physical act of speaking with stress. Every time you open your mouth, your brain is like, uh-oh, here we go.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
But by narrating your life, you associate the physical act of speaking with boiling water and making toast. It completely normalizes the vibration of your own vocal cords.
This is a huge realization for anyone who gives presentations or pitches. Think about how we usually prep for those. We sit at our desk, we silently read our bullet points on the slides, and we think, yep, I know exactly what I'm going to say. Looks good.
Mm-hmm.
We do a completely silent, dry run.
Which is incredibly dangerous. It's a false sense of security.
It really is, because then you get into the conference room, the projector is on,
Yeah.
you open your mouth, and you stumble over the very first transition. You say a word like, I don't know, synergistic, and your tongue just trips over it because your mouth has physically never formed that exact sequence of syllables before.
Yep.
And the moment you stumble, the social threat response kicks in, and boom, you freeze.
You absolutely must do your dry runs out loud. You have to physically navigate the phonetic terrain of your sentences before the stakes are real. You have to remove the physical novelty of the words.
Okay, so we've addressed the psychology of the freeze, and we are physically conditioning our mouths by narrating our vegetable chopping to the wall.
Yes, step 1 and 2.
But as we see around day 3 in the transcripts, Fizu hits another wall. His mouth is willing, but there's this agonizing lag time between when he thinks of something and when he actually says it.
Yes, the cognitive bottleneck. And this brings us to one of the most fascinating mechanisms of the entire deep dive, honestly, breaking the translation loop.
This was a massive aha moment for me reading through this. Masu notices that Fizu is speaking very, very slowly, like painfully slow. And Fizu finally confesses what is actually happening inside his head during a conversation. He realizes that he isn't just thinking and speaking, he is running this exhausting 4-step mental relay race.
Walk us through Fizu's internal process because it's so common.
Okay, so Masu asks him a question in English. Step 1. Fizu hears the English and he translates it back into his native Italian in his head just to understand what was asked.
Right.
Step 2. He thinks about his answer in Italian. Step 3. He takes that Italian answer and translates it back into English, meticulously applying all the grammar rules he learned. Step 4. He finally opens his mouth and speaks.
It is exhausting just listening to you describe it.
Imagine doing that for every single sentence in a 30-minute conversation. I mean, no wonder the guy was freezing. His RAM was completely fried.
That 4-step process is the translation loop, and it guarantees that you will always be 3 to 5 seconds behind the pace of a natural conversation. You can never catch up. And Masu's rule to combat this is absolute, and it sounds almost impossible at first. He tells Fizu, you must stop translating in your head.
Which is so easy to say, but how on earth do you just stop? Like, if you don't know the language perfectly, how do you bypass the only tool you have to understand it?
Well, Masu provides a very specific neurological workaround. You have to train your brain to associate the target language directly with the physical concept, bypassing your native language entirely.
Ah, the dog example.
Right. Masu tells Fizu, when you are walking down the street and you see a dog, what usually happens? Fizu sees the animal, his brain automatically fires the Italian word cane, and then Fizu has to actively translate cane to dog.
The middleman.
Exactly. Masu says you have to assassinate the middleman. You must look at the furry animal with 4 legs, bypass the Italian word entirely, and force your brain to directly link the visual image to the word dog.
He tells Fizu to start doing this with the absolute most basic internal monologues. Like, instead of thinking complex thoughts, just wake up and force the direct thought. I am awake.
Yeah.
You feel a rumble in your stomach. You don't think about hunger in Italian. You just directly to the English words, I'm hungry, I need coffee.
You are building a new, direct bridge between the physical sensation and the vocabulary.
Now, I have to stop here because reading this part, I felt deeply sympathetic to Fizu. Because forcing your brain to bypass its default lifelong neural pathways all day long, that sounds incredibly mentally draining, like a headache waiting to happen.
Oh, it is. It causes immense mental fatigue. It is highly uncomfortable. But the beauty of the Speak Up curriculum is that Masu does not hide this fact. He doesn't promise it will be easy or fun, but he explains why the fatigue is necessary. Short-term mental friction is the required price for long-term automaticity.
Automaticity. Let's linger on that word for a second. It's a really great concept.
It is. Let's apply it to something we all know.
Yeah.
Think about learning to type on a computer keyboard. When you first learn, you don't have automaticity. You have to look at the screen, decide you want the letter T, look down at the keyboard, scan the rows, physically locate the T, and then command your index finger to press it. It's slow. It's a loop.
It's like translating in your head. It's clunky.
Exactly. But if you force yourself to learn touch typing, if you cover your hands and force your brain to map the physical location of the keys directly to the intention of the letter without looking, it is incredibly frustrating at first. Your error rate goes way up, your brain hurts, you just want to quit and look at your hands.
But eventually,
Eventually, you achieve automaticity. You think the word the and your fingers just type it. You don't even know where the T is consciously anymore. Your body just knows. By breaking the translation loop, you are forcing the communication process into the automatic subconscious part of your brain.
and when you don't have to spend all your RAM thinking about how to say something, your confidence naturally spikes because you can focus entirely on what you were saying. You can actually listen to the other person instead of just prepping your next sentence.
That is the ultimate freedom in communication, to just be present, but to be realistic, even with automaticity, even when you aren't translating, real-time conversations are inherently unpredictable. You cannot plan for everything the other person is going to say. They might throw you a total curveball.
Which brings us perfectly to days 6 through 9 of the transcripts. Because Masu knows Fizu's going to get stuck. The curveballs are coming. And so he arms him with safety nets.
Yes, we can call these safety nets conversational templates.
I love this section. Masu sort of moves away from the internal theory and starts running these intense specific role plays. He acts as a waiter, a store clerk, a stranger on the street giving directions. And he introduces a core mechanic that I think every single listener needs to adopt immediately, whether they are speaking a new language or just trying to survive a networking event.
You're talking about the +1 rule.
The +1 rule.
Yeah.
It is so simple, but so transformative. In one of the early role plays, Masu pretends to be a colleague and asks Fizu, "How was your weekend?" And Fizu, using his direct translation, gives a perfectly grammatical answer. He says, "It was good."
And then silence.
Total, painful, awkward silence. Masu actually stops the role play and asks Fizu why the conversation died right there.
Let's dissect the psychology of that awkward silence. Why does a short, accurate answer kill the interaction?
Because it places the entire burden of conversation back on the other person. If I ask you how your weekend was, and you just say good, you've essentially given me a brick wall. Now I have to frantically search my brain for a brand new topic to keep things going. It feels like I'm interrogating you, like I'm pulling teeth to get information.
Exactly. It's deflective communication. You are surviving the interaction, sure, but you are not participating in it. Confident communication requires offense, not just defense.
So Masood teaches the +1 rule.
Hmm.
The rule is you answer the question and you add one piece of information or one return question to keep the ball rolling. So instead of just, "It was good," you say, "It was good. I went to that new Italian restaurant downtown. Have you been there?"
By adding the +1, you are handing the conversational baton back to them smoothly. You are providing hooks for them to grab onto. They can say, "Oh, the Italian place. No, but I love pasta." Suddenly, the conversation is flowing naturally. You are taking ownership of the interaction. You are signaling, "I belong in this conversation, and I am actively contributing to it."
It takes so much pressure off both people. And the transcripts are packed with these little templates. I actually combed through and pulled out a whole list of what I'm calling fallback phrases.
These are crucial. When the cognitive load gets too high and you feel that freeze coming on, you don't want to be inventing sentences from scratch. You need pre-built structures you can just deploy without thinking.
Right, because freezing happens when you don't know what to do next. If you have a template in your back pocket, you never have to freeze. For example, what happens when someone says something you completely don't understand?
Well, the natural instinct is to panic, nod enthusiastically, and pretend you understood, which inevitably leads to total disaster later on.
We've all done the fake nod, it's terrible. But Masu gives Fizu a fallback phrase for exactly this. "I'm a little confused. Can you explain that again? Or could you walk me through that one more time?"
Look at the mechanics of that phrase. It is polite, it is incredibly clear, and paradoxically, admitting you don't understand something in a calm tone actually makes you look more confident.
Yeah, how does that work?
Because it shows you are secure enough in your own intelligence to ask for clarification. You aren't trying to hide anything. That projects massive confidence.
Another brilliant one from the role plays is for when the roles are reversed. Say you were talking to someone, and they are struggling. Maybe they're trying to find a word, or they're just super nervous giving you a project update. Masu teaches Fizu to use the phrase, "Take your time."
Take your time. 3 tiny words. But culturally and psychologically, it is incredibly powerful.
It changes the entire temperature of the room. Like if you are panicking and the person across from you smiles and says calmly, "Take your time," what happens? Your shoulders drop. Your heart rate slows down.
Because you are granting them grace. And when you give someone else grace, you establish yourself as the calm, grounded center of that interaction. You are essentially saying, I am not threatened by this awkward pause. We are safe here. It relieves the tension for both of you immediately.
And Masu makes a really important point about these templates and about communication in general, which is they need to be simple. There is a whole segment where Fizu tried to memorize these massive, complex vocabulary words to sound smarter.
Ah, yes. The university professor trap.
Yes. Fizu wants to say he is happy about something, but he tries to use this phrase he read in a fancy book, I am exceedingly delighted, and he completely stumbles over it. Masu stops him and says, do not try to sound like a professor. True confidence is simplicity.
It's a very common misconception. We equate big, multisyllabic words with intelligence and authority. We think we have to sound like a thesaurus. But in spoken communication, complexity introduces friction. It increases your cognitive load, and it increases the listener's cognitive load, too.
I'm very happy it's faster, it's more natural, and you aren't going to bite your tongue trying to say it. The goal is human connection, not passing a vocabulary exam.
Exactly. These simple templates, the +1 rule, the fallback phrases, they act as your safety net. When the conversation speeds up and you feel that panic rising in your chest, you don't try to invent poetry. You fall back on your simple, well-worn templates to buy yourself time and regain your footing.
Okay, we have covered so much ground here. I mean, we are rebranding our mistakes as essential data. We are shadowing and narrating our lives to our toasters to build physical muscle memory. We are breaking that exhausting translation loop by forcing direct thought. And we are using the +1 rule and simple templates to navigate the unpredictability of real-time chats.
It is an incredibly robust toolkit. If you master these, you're golden.
But, and this is a big but, from the final day of the transcripts, none of this matters if you don't implement it correctly over time. Which brings us to the final section of our deep dive, the compound interest of consistency.
Day 10, the culmination of the challenge. Emma Sue hammers home one absolutely non-negotiable rule for Fizu's future.
He tells Fizu that moving forward, practicing for just 5 to 10 minutes every single day is vastly, exponentially superior to sitting down and studying for 3 hours on a Sunday.
And this isn't just about language learning. This is a profound insight into human behavioral psychology. Let's look at why cramming fails so miserably when it comes to communication skills.
When I think of cramming, I think of college finals. High stress, drinking 3 energy drinks, pulling an all-nighter in the library.
Exactly. When you block out 3 hours on a Sunday to work on your public speaking or study your networking skills, you are creating a major event. You are telling your brain this is a massive, difficult, high-stakes undertaking. You are attaching immense pressure to the activity.
It feels like a massive chore.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's intimidating. If I know I have a 3-hour block of practicing ahead of me, I'm going to procrastinate. I'll find literally any excuse to reorganize my sock drawer instead of doing it.
Because the brain actively avoids high-friction tasks. But by engaging in a daily, ultra-low-stakes routine like 5 minutes of shadowing a podcast while you drive to work, 5 minutes of narrating your breakfast, 5 minutes of practicing your +1 responses in the shower, you completely remove the pressure.
You normalize the behavior.
Yes.
Yeah.
You signal to your nervous system that speaking confidently, navigating different phonetic sounds, and using these templates is just a normal, boring, everyday part of life. It is not an emergency. It does not require a spike in cortisol.
I love comparing this to brushing your teeth.
It's the perfect parallel.
Like, you don't ignore your dental hygiene all week and then stand in front of the mirror on Sunday night and brush your teeth furiously for 3 straight hours to make up for it.
I mean, your gums would bleed and your teeth would still rot. It doesn't work like that.
You brush them for 2 minutes every morning and 2 minutes every night. It's not an event. It's just a habit. You barely even think about doing it. Confidence in communication is exactly the same. It is a hygiene habit. You have to maintain it daily.
And if you doubt the power of that daily 5-minute compound interest, all you have to do is look at the narrative arc of Fizu from day 1 to day 10. It's right there in the text.
The transformation is genuinely inspiring. Let's track it. On day 1, as we talked about, the guy is terrified. He is using short, halting sentences. He is constantly freezing up. He is using the present tense for everything because he literally doesn't have the RAM to remember the past tense. He says, I wake up yesterday instead of I woke up.
He was entirely overwhelmed by the cognitive load. But by day 10, because he has consistently done the shadowing, the direct thinking, and the role plays every single day,
Right.
the shift is undeniable.
You can read it in the transcripts.
Yeah.
He is actively self-correcting in real time without freezing. He says, I wake up, wait, no, I woke up. That shows his brain has internalized the rule and is auditing his speech on the fly without crashing the whole system.
He has achieved a degree of automaticity.
He is using the +1 rule without Masu even prompting him. Masu asks about his evening, and Fizu answers and immediately asks Masu a follow-up question. And most importantly, at the very end of day 10, he openly expresses pride in his progress.
His exact quote is quite moving, actually.
It really is. He says, I feel much more confident. I know I still make mistakes, but I'm not afraid anymore.
I'm not afraid anymore. That is the entire ballgame right there. The goal of the Speak Up Challenge wasn't to produce a robot with flawless grammar. The goal was the absence of fear. And that absence of fear was only achieved through the relentless low-stakes normalization of the uncomfortable act.
So think about your own life right now. Whatever communication hurdle you are facing, maybe you have to lead a really difficult team meeting next week. Or maybe you are going to a conference and you just absolutely hate small talk. Stop waiting for the perfect time to sit down and prepare for hours.
The perfect time is a total illusion.
It doesn't exist. You need to start the 5-minute habit today. Spend 5 minutes in the car on your commute, actually speaking your introductory remarks out loud. When you make dinner tonight, spend 3 minutes narrating the chopping of the onions to build that physical pathway.
It is the daily consistency that builds those neural pathways and lowers the threat response. That's the secret sauce.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at the whole picture we've painted today. We set out to extract the ultimate toolkit for confident communication from this 30-day fluency challenge. And I think we've uncovered something much deeper than just, tips and tricks.
Oh, absolutely. We've uncovered a holistic operating system for how to interact with other humans. We started by disarming the psychological freeze. We learned that the brain treats social judgment like a physical predator, and the only way to short-circuit that is to rebrand our mistakes. They are not failures. They are the required data points for growth.
Then we looked at the physical machinery. We learned that silent preparation is a total trap. You have to use shadowing to physically train your jaw and vocal cords, building the muscle memory of confidence so you don't stumble when the pressure is really on.
Mentally, we dissected the translation loop, that exhausting 4-step relay race in your head. We discussed the painful but entirely necessary process of forcing direct thought to achieve automaticity, freeing up your cognitive RAM.
We gathered our safety nets too, the conversational templates, using the +1 rule to take ownership of an interaction and utilizing fallback phrases like take your time or I'm a little confused to diffuse tension and buy time without panicking.
And finally, we anchored all of it in the unglamorous but undeniable power of daily consistency. 5 minutes a day to make the uncomfortable feel completely, boringly normal.
It is an incredible roadmap. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
Throughout this entire deep dive, we've talked about how to manage the fear of mistakes, right? How to recover when you make them and how to lower the stakes so they don't happen as often. But what if we took Masu's mandate to make mistakes to its extreme logical conclusion?
Okay, what exactly does the extreme conclusion look like?
Think about it. What if the absolute fastest, most efficient way to become an unshakably confident communicator isn't just to try and avoid embarrassing yourself or even just to tolerate mistakes when they inevitably happen, but to actively, intentionally seek out the situations where you are most likely to fail?
Intentionally placing yourself right in the dead center of the zone of high social threat.
Yes. Because what is true confidence? Ultimately, it isn't the absence of errors. No one, not a CEO, not a professional speaker, not a native speaker, is perfectly articulate all the time. True confidence is the proven, lived resilience of knowing you can completely stumble, say the completely wrong word, blank out entirely, and then just take a breath, correct it, and keep speaking without your world collapsing.
You can't just theoretically know you will survive a mistake. You have to prove it to your nervous system.
Exactly. It's like stress testing a bridge. The engineers don't just do the math on a whiteboard and say, yeah, it should hold. They drive massive trucks onto it to prove it won't break. By actively seeking out challenging conversations, by volunteering to speak first in a meeting, by walking up to the most intimidating person at the networking event, you are stress testing your own resilience.
You are accumulating the undeniable proof that a mistake will not kill you. And once your nervous system truly believes that deep down, the fear just vanishes.
So the next time you feel that pressure rising, the next time you feel the X-ray machine of conversation zooming in on you, looking for the flaw, looking for the freeze, I want you to step into it. The picture doesn't have to be perfect. The messy, muddy waters of making mistakes are where real human connection actually happens. Embrace the mess. Stress test the bridge. Happy, messy, and confident communicating to you all. We'll see you next time.